Whether it's your morning cup of coffee or that pre-workout you swear by, caffeine is, without a doubt, the world's favorite performance enhancer. I mean, so many of us rely on it to get focused, shake off that tired feeling, and just power through the day. So let's get into it, because it turns out there's some brand new and honestly pretty conflicting science about how this daily habit is really affecting our bodies, especially when it comes to fitness. And that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. Is that coffee you're drinking actually helping your workout, or could it, maybe, be holding you back? Well, the answer is way more complicated than you'd think, and it really leads us to this core idea. You see, you've got to think of caffeine as a classic double-edged sword. On one side, it is an incredibly powerful tool that can help you unlock a whole new level of performance. But on the other side, new research is showing that if you use it the wrong way, it can totally undermine all of your progress. So let's look at both sides of that blade, and we'll start with the good news.
All right, first up, the performance booster. We've all felt that jolt, right? That kick of energy. But what does the absolute latest science say about how caffeine really impacts our athletic power? Well, a brand new study gives us some surprisingly clear answers.
Okay, so this study had a really smart design. Each of the 15 athletes went through the ringer 4 different times, testing all 4 supplement types on separate days. This meant the researchers could compare each athlete against himself, which gives us a super accurate picture of how each form of caffeine, or, no caffeine at all, was really affecting their bodies.
And the results? They were really striking. The researchers used something called a Wingate test. It's basically an all-out, super high-intensity bike sprint to measure peak power. And one form of caffeine just blew the others away. As you can see right here on this chart, caffeinated coffee delivered a way higher power output than both the powdered caffeine and the placebo. So it wasn't just about getting caffeine into the system, the source really mattered. But the benefits didn't just stop at raw power, and this is where it gets really interesting. The athletes who drink the caffeinated coffee, they also had the highest levels of testosterone after their workout, which is a key hormone for strength, and the lowest levels of lactic acid, which is that stuff that makes your muscles burn and fatigue. It basically created the perfect internal environment for peak performance. So the takeaway here is huge. Not all caffeine is created equal. What researchers think is happening is that other compounds in coffee, things like polyphenols, which are these natural antioxidants, they might be teaming up with the caffeine, helping your body absorb and use it even better. But just as we're seeing how powerful coffee can be, the science throws us a major curveball. Let's flip over to the other side of that sword. And this is where our story takes a sharp turn. Because it seems that the very same stimulant that helps you hit a new personal record might, under certain conditions, be the very thing that's stopping you from actually getting stronger. Yeah, so researchers at UC Davis found this tipping point, this line where caffeine flips from being a booster to being a blocker. And it all comes down to 2 things, dose and timing. When your body is exposed to too much caffeine too continuously, its benefits can actually reverse, and it starts actively getting in the way of your body's ability to recover and adapt. Now, to figure this out, they started really small at the cellular level. They literally grew human ligaments in the lab and exposed them to a constant, high dose of caffeine. And the result was wild. These ligaments were a staggering 45% weaker than the ones grown without caffeine. Why? Because their ability to produce collagen was seriously impaired. Okay, now hold on. Before you panic and pour your precious coffee down the drain, let's get some really important context here. This study is very specific that this negative effect was seen at levels that are the human equivalent of drinking about 6 or more cups of coffee every single day. We're talking about excessive, nonstop consumption here, not your typical 1 or 2 cups in the morning. And when they tested this high-dose idea in animal studies, the results were just as clear. Compared to the mice who only exercised, the mice who were given high, continuous doses of caffeine saw their muscle growth blunted, their tendons stopped getting stronger from the exercise, and that key process of protein synthesis, which is how you build muscle, was reduced. Basically, their bodies just couldn't cash in on all the hard work they were doing. Okay, so we know the form of caffeine matters, and we know that too much can be a real problem. So this brings us to probably the most practical and, let's be honest, hotly debated question of all. For that first cup of the day, when is the right time to drink it? Because there are 2 very, very passionate schools of thought on this. And welcome to the great morning debate. Are you on team delay or are you on team drink now? I'm sure you've heard the arguments for both sides swirling around online, so let's actually break down the science behind each one.
All right, first up, we have team delay. This is a super popular idea in a lot of health and wellness circles. The argument goes like this. You should wait about 90 to 120 minutes after you wake up to have your coffee. The reasoning, your body has a natural spike in a hormone called cortisol in the morning that already makes you feel alert. So drinking coffee then is kind of pointless and might even mess with that natural process. They also say waiting gives your body time to clear out any leftover adenosine. That's the chemical that builds up to make you feel sleepy, which supposedly means you'll have less of an afternoon crash.
But then you've got Team Drink Now, and they come back with some pretty strong points. First, they say that if you're a regular coffee drinker, your body builds up a tolerance, so that cortisol spike from caffeine in the morning is tiny, if it even happens at all. Second, and this one is a big deal, adenosine gets cleared out while you're sleeping, not after you wake up. The moment your eyes open, it's already starting to build again. So, from their perspective, drinking caffeine right away is the most effective way to block those receptors and fight off that morning grogginess. So what about that awful afternoon slump we all dread? Well, the Drink Now crowd argues that it has way more to do with your total caffeine dose for the day, how hydrated you are, and when you're eating, not when you had your first cup. As the folks at Zest Labs put it, the idea that the timing of your morning coffee is the real reason you crash later is pretty much a myth.
And this suggests that if avoiding a crash is your main goal, the answer might not be when you drink your coffee, but what kind of coffee or caffeine you're drinking. For instance, some newer products use time-release technology. The idea is to give you a much steadier, smoother energy curve that lasts for 4 to 6 hours, which helps you avoid that sharp spike and the nasty crash that often follows with regular coffee.
So, we've talked about the good, the bad, and the big timing debate. For this last part, let's put all the pieces together. How can you take all this science and use it to build your own smart, personalized caffeine strategy that actually works for you? Here are 4 key things to remember. First, mind your dose. The UC Davis research was crystal clear. More is not better, and going overboard can actually work against you. Second, think about the form. Remember that 2024 study showed that good old-fashioned coffee was more effective than just pure isolated caffeine powder. Third, time it to your goal. Caffeine is an amazing pre-workout tool for sure, but maybe not the best thing to have right after you're done. And finally, number 4, you have to listen to your own body. This whole debate just proves there's no single one-size-fits-all rule. You have to experiment and see what actually makes you feel and perform your best. And if you just want some simple, easy rules of thumb, here are 2 good ones. First, try to avoid caffeine right after you train. Your body needs to switch into that rest and digest mode to start recovering, and a stimulant just keeps you jacked up in fight or flight. Also, to protect your sleep, which is maybe the most important part of recovery, most experts say you should probably cut off all caffeine by around 1 p.m. So, here's the bottom line. Caffeine is an incredibly powerful, but very nuanced tool. It's not just about if you drink it, but it's about how, when, and in what form you're taking it in. And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Now that you know the science, how are you going to use caffeine tomorrow?